too. It's definitely an inner peace in the midst of something very chaotic, and for a lot of people right now, the whole world is very, very chaotic. So I guess that's another reason why so many people are very drawn to this.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. War Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. is winning with an unrelenting focus on its objectives, saying today will be the most intense day of strikes against Iran. President Trump warning the Iranian regime if it blocks the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. will strike even harder, and markets react to President Trump's comment on how long the war could last. Shots fired at the U.S. consulate in Toronto, Canada. What do we know so far about the incident amid the war in Iran? Georgia's 14th district heads to the polls to choose Marjorie Taylor Greene's replacement, who is leading the crowded field in this special election, which could have a big impact on the balance of power in Congress. President Trump is ramping up pressure to enforce voter ID, vowing to stall any bills from becoming law until it's approved by Congress.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Our top story: voters in Georgia's 14th congressional district are heading to the polls today to choose a replacement for Marjorie Taylor Greene. The race could affect the balance of power in the House of Representatives. A large field of candidates is competing in the special election, down from 22 to 17. All candidates appearing on the same ballot regardless of party affiliation. Among the leading Republican contenders is State District Attorney Clay Fuller, endorsed by President Trump. Among the Democrats is retired Army Brigadier General Sean Harris, who ran against Greene in 2024. If no candidate wins a majority, the top two finishers will advance to another vote next month. Greene resigned from her seat in January following a public fallout with President Trump. President Trump is ramping up pressure on congressional Republicans to approve changes to voter ID requirements. He vows to stop signing other bills into law until it's done. But Senate Leader John Thune is unclear on how to move the bill forward amid opposition. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the report.
The Save America Act would require proof of citizenship to register to vote and a photo ID when voting in person. It's an issue that Republicans have repeatedly said is popular among both Republican and Democrat voters.
This is about a 90-10 issue in the polling, because all that we've done tonight in this simple piece of legislation is apply common sense.
President Trump has insisted that this is the top priority for him, and he says it should be for lawmakers too. The president at the GOP Issues Conference yesterday doubled down on a previous vow to not approve any other bills until this becomes law.
Let's go for the gold, and let's just not accept anything else. I'll tell you what, I'm willing to just sort of say I'm not going to sign anything until this is approved. I really am, but that's how bad it is. If you don't get it, big trouble, my opinion. If you get this, your midterms, and they know it. For two reasons. Number one, they won't be able to cheat. And number two, the people are demanding it.
And theoretically, there is a path forward despite Democrat pushback. One way would be to nuke the 60-vote filibuster, which is what requires Democrat support in the current makeup of the Senate to pass most legislation. But this is unlikely to get Republican support, so Senate Majority Leader John Thune said it's simply not an option.
There aren't anywhere close to the votes, not even close, to nuking the filibuster. And so that idea is something, although it continues to be put out there, is something that doesn't have a future. So is there another way of getting there? We'll see.
Another pathway forward that's been pushed strongly by President Trump himself, as well as several senators. Senator Mike Lee is the leading force here in calling for a talking filibuster that would look like an unlimited debate instead of the usual 30-hour debate window that's provided for most legislation. It would require Democrats to hold the floor for as long as it takes for debate to wind down before a vote. And if Republicans are able to outlast Democrats in this, they would be able to pass the Save America Act with a simple majority vote instead of needing Democrat support. The idea has gotten a lot of steam online, but Senate Majority Leader John Thune dismissed the online push as the product of a paid influencer ecosystem. Senator Mike Lee last night pushing back.
Tens of millions of Americans have jumped on the cause of supporting the Save America Act and using the talking filibuster to advance it. I regret that some in Washington tonight are dismissing all those who feel this way and who have weighed in.
Senate Leader Thune insists that the result of invoking a talking filibuster is unclear, but he says he's still talking with the conference on how to move forward. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
President Trump says House Republicans must pass the Save America Act as it remains held up in the Senate. He says it should be their main focus heading into the midterms. Joining us for more on this is Mike Leon, host of Can We Please Talk podcast and director of strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. And we have Tony Kinnett, national correspondent for the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. Okay, good afternoon to you both. Mike, I'll start with you today. I have a clip here of President Trump talking about the Save America Act. Let's just take a quick look.
It's very simple. All voters must show the act. Voter ID. Ready? This is not complicated. Voter identification. Now, if I have a whole list, but I don't want to put. I have like hundreds of things on the list. If you go shopping, if you do this, if you buy a car, if you license a car, if you point to everything you need to have identification. So all voters have to show identification, ID. All voters must show proof of citizenship in order to vote. So you have ID and you have citizenship. So far, good.
Mike, he said this yesterday. Your reaction?
Yeah, he's right. We already do all of that stuff. Good afternoon, guys. He's right. Earlier today, I was registering for something down here in the state of Florida. Guess what I had to show? I had to show my ID. I got my voter election card in the mail. It has my precinct on it. Guess what I have to do when I go to the precinct? I already show my ID. These are things we already do, guys. This is not rocket science. So the fact that the president outlined like 5 or 6 examples there, like when you go to buy a car, which is true. I just recently purchased a car a couple years ago. Yeah, you got to show your ID when you're signing all the paperwork. It's the same thing. Now, is it universal across states? No. Some states require on the day that you go to the precinct to actually bring your ID. Other states have already verified you through other methods, whether it be the DMV, et cetera, when you go to register to vote. Like where I'm moving back to New York. In New York, we do that right now, right? You register to vote at the DMV. And so when you go to the precinct, they already have your information there because you've already showed ID at the first place. These are things that we already do. The fact that the president is focusing on this act and blocking other pieces of legislation, potentially, he said, to potentially go through the rest of the legislature. I don't know if that's the smartest thing. I'll leave to Tony to decide that. But I think Thune is right. And if I can just quote Mitch McConnell from back in 2017, we can't let the radical part of the base overtake, this nuclear option of vandalizing the Senate. I'm paraphrasing a little bit of what he said. Those words were in 2017. I think he's right on the money still here. And I think John Thune is taking the right position on this because he knows he doesn't have the votes for this.
Okay, Tony, a lot there. Your response, do we already do voter ID for elections?
I mean, unfortunately, no. And I point to Minnesota as the example here. And of course, a good afternoon to you both. Hope it's not as stormy there as it is here. And in regard to this voter ID situation in Minnesota, you can vouch for up to 7 people. You show up to the polls and you say, oh, yeah, these 7 people, they're who they say they are. That's wrong. That's not a good thing. Also in Wisconsin, all the way out to California, you can get a driver's license, which allows you to register to vote, even if you're not a citizen of the United States. Now, again, hopefully they catch you. We've seen in cases over the last 10 years that they haven't. And those particular things are one of the reasons why that Americans, from Democrats to Republicans, support voter ID measures like the rest of the free world. And so it's important here that, yeah, while many are currently saying it's going to be the boon to women, poor married women, they could never figure out how to prove that they changed their name. Oh, no one's ever done that before. That kind of fear mongering is silly. I think that Thune saying that he doesn't want to mess with the filibuster here, the arguments that he's put against it are rather weird, saying it's an influence campaign. Not this one. I'm afraid there are a lot of congressmen on the Senate and the House side that are pushing for this. But as for the filibuster itself, well, sure, I'd love the filibuster to be in place. But as soon as the Democrats take control of the Senate, they're nuking the filibuster as it is. They have promised to do so. So at this point, if this is the key legislation that Americans vastly support, Jim Banks made this case to me yesterday on our show that this is the point and reason of actually moving this forward. And given that this is something Americans do want, not saying, oh, we're actually going to focus on housing or, oh, we're actually going to focus on the shutdown, two very important things, getting this passed through first right away makes sense based on how Americans feel about it.
Okay, Mike, like you said, not all states require voter ID, but do you think Democrats would break party lines to push it over the finish line? Do you think this could happen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so, but I also think that there are parts of it that people agree with, right? And I've said this before on the show, and we'll talk about this probably in a second. But like, if you look at some of the pieces of legislation that some Democrats have introduced, it's about certain areas that they agree with the president on, and then certain areas that they want more discussion on. Just look at Rosa DeLauro, who recently introduced something to keep TSA and FEMA and parts of DHS open, versus let's continue to have a conversation about ICE and CBP funding, given the events that have happened in Minnesota, to Tony's point. So if you take that in isolation, I don't think the Vote Save America's Act or Save America's Vote Act, I don't know what it's being called this week, but I don't think that is the piece of legislation that the president should be focused on. Unfortunately, right now, we've started a war in the Middle East with Iran. Gas prices are high. There are other things that are happening, not only economically, but things that are being introduced legislatively from both chambers that we should be a little bit more focused on versus this. And again, he gave a litany of examples of things we already do. And this is not my data, guys. Go to the Heritage Foundation, go to the brookings.edu, go to these foundations that have all done assessments about voter election fraud and data that has happened throughout the last 10, 20 years. The cases are in the 0.00008%. Those are very low. There's a lot of O's in front of it, guys. And it's because of this. Now, does it absolve it? Of course not. But like I've said before, there's running into the kicker and there's roughing the kicker in the NFL. The penalties are the same, but one's way more egregious. And right now, this is very running into the kicker with respect to legislation that the president thinks that this is something on his side, when we've got 75% of people don't support the war in Iran and boots on the ground, and 60% of people saying Congress should have had the ability to chime in with respect to what they have control over, the purse strings of how we conduct a war operation. So we've got bigger fish to fry, and I think the president is focusing on the wrong thing with respect to this issue.
Okay, Tony, your response, and how do you feel about Trump saying he won't sign any other legislation until this one?
Well, I mean, again, I think this is a very simple win, given the piece of legislation, the data that we've already outlined here in this segment. Again, that there are states that give driver's licenses to those who are not citizens of the United States, but still consider a driver's license to be appropriate identification in order to vote. Of course, when we've looked, of course, at Minnesota, which allows you to vouch for up to 7-8 people when you go to vote, those are problems. Those are clear holes. Just because there's a small number of cases doesn't mean murder's totally fine. That's not how we do law. Additionally, when we're talking about things the president should focus on, yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly comfortable talking about Iran and talking about the security threats. I personally wouldn't have shut down Department of Homeland Security amid 2 Islamic terror incidents, throwing 2 IEDs packed with shrapnel in New York City, or, of course, down in Texas, the property of Allah sweatshirt guy. I mean, I wouldn't have shut down DHS. That sounds like a morally abhorrent thing to do because you want to posture and preen over ICE. I mean, that's the kind of hill that the Democrats have chosen to stake American safety and security on. It seems like the one thing that we really want TSA to do, they're not able to do. And Rosa DeLauro can get out there when she's not doing dancing videos and talk about how important it is to separate the funding out. But we don't do that. We don't isolate tiny little bits of funding so that people can throw fits over whether or not they want certain parts of the government funded. No, you fund the government fully, because it is ridiculous to put the safety of America at stake because you're really, really grumpy that Tom Homan or Kristi Noem or maybe Mark Wayne Mullinahead didn't say the right words about people who are in the country illegally. It's irresponsible.
Okay, Mike, let me ask you this. President Trump has urged Senate Majority Leader John Thune to impose the talking filibuster rule to pass the bill. What do you think here? Thune is saying that using this rule is going to take up a lot of time, Senate floor time. I mean, do you think he has a choice here to go against President Trump?
Well, let's find out. I mean, that's the beauty of all of this, right? I think this is another thing that when you talk about things in a rudimentary level, like this is one of the things that a lot of people don't know the nuanced differences between these two. And I think John Thune is playing the numbers game, and he, like me, I would hope, is understanding that there are other things from a legislative perspective that need to get done. And this is something that I don't have the numbers right now. So why stop everything dead in its tracks? We already have passed the lowest amount of bills, or set to pass the lowest amount of bills since the previous iteration of Congress prior. So why would we want to do all of that and hold all of this up when I don't have the numbers here? This barely passed in the House. And as we were talking about before, there are parts of it that Thune has said we could try to get passed versus actually trying to just force this whole bill in when we don't have the actual numbers. And I want to go back to something Tony said. Democrats would never nuke the filibuster because they're wussies. And if they did, they would have years ago. But Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin decided not to. And Chuck Schumer is inept. And Hakeem Jeffries is inept. So they're wussies, and they're never going to do it. See, Republicans actually do it, the thing that they're going to do, whether it's, talk about DEI, CRT, all these other things, they actually do it. Democrats will talk, and they'll talk above your head, and then they'll never actually do it. And that's the frustration that I've heard from Democrats all
come on,
throughout
Mike.
life.
Come on.
It's true.
Don't
if they
play
would have
this
done it,
game.
Tony, if they would have done it, Tony, if they would have done it, they would have done it already. They would have done it when they controlled the levers of Congress, and they didn't. You know why?
But they
again,
did, and they had two Democrats who defected. They did do it. They had two Democrats who defected, and Republicans have senators on the moderate side.
If they did do it, why isn't Thune passing it?
Mitch McConnell.
If they did do it, why isn't Thune?
All right.
Okay, so
we can move on from whether Democrats will do this or not.
I don't want to make this into a YouTube video where my thumbnail is popping up on Daily Signal's face. But if they had the numbers already and the filibuster was nuked, they would have done this already. So they clearly didn't do it. Like, it's not a Mike Leon thing. This is like an actual thing. Like, he doesn't have the numbers. The filibuster's still in place. Like, they never did it because Democrats, again, are wussies. They don't stand up for their constituents.
They have moderates who break away, like Jared Golden over in the House.
All right.
You have moderates who break away. Both parties do. It's
okay, so Mike is convinced. Mike is convinced
that.
Democrats will do it. Tony is convinced that Democrats won't do it. We'll just leave it there. We'll move on from this point.
Yeah.
Right. Reverse. Sorry. Okay, Tony, let me ask you this. How do you feel about Ken Paxton saying he's going to drop out of the race if Senate leadership agrees to lift the filibuster and pass the Save America Act?
I actually had pitched kind of a slight tweak on the idea. I thought that Trump should go over to Thune, who once Cornyn endorsed, and said, look, you want me to endorse Cornyn, you need to bring forward the Save America Act for a talking filibuster, which, yes, would take a very long time, lots of procedure, but it would force Cory Booker to get out and yell for 48 hours on the floor of the Senate. Or in this case, nuking the filibuster entirely, which, again, we'd have to see if Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski would go in that favor. I thought Trump might float the idea. Instead, we actually had Paxton float the idea instead, which is an interesting move because it's an admission from Paxton that he's probably not as safe a bet against Tallarico, although with the videos coming out about Tallarico being exactly like every other fake moderate, it's those chances are starting to sink rather precipitously. Again, whether it's Cornyn or Paxton, it's really bizarre to see Paxton recognize he has baggage, maybe in kind of the same way Tony Gonzalez did against Brandon Herrera in the GOP House primary in Texas. I think that it was a good idea to float. But if you have that kind of consciousness to say, oh, wait a minute, I maybe don't have what it takes to win the Senate election in a tight Texas run.
All right. Okay. So we have to leave it there because the White House press secretary is holding a press briefing right now. We have to tune into that. Thank you both for coming on today.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Let's tune in to Caroline Levitt speaking to the press right now.
With the American people last night, the United States military is making tremendous strides towards achieving our military objectives for Operation Epic Fury. 10 days in, this campaign has been a resounding success thus far, and America's warriors are winning this important fight at an even faster pace than we anticipated. More than 5,000 enemy targets have been struck so far. Iran's ballistic missile attacks are down more than 90%, and their drone attacks are down by approximately 85% since the start of Operation Epic Fury. The United States is also annihilating the Iranian regime's navy, and we have destroyed more than 50 Iranian naval vessels, including a major drone carrier ship. None of the regime's vessels are operating in major regional waterways, and the Iranian navy has been assessed as combat ineffective. The trend is clear. U.S. combat capabilities are increasing and growing more lethal and dominant by the day, while the Iranian terrorist regime's ability to respond has rapidly declined. Now, the U.S. military is moving to dismantle Iran's missile production infrastructure. Our incredible B-2 bombers recently dropped dozens of 2,000-pound penetrator bombs on deeply buried missile sites. Last night, President Trump reiterated his commitment toward keeping oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz so the United States and all of our allies can receive their energy needs. President Trump will not allow rogue Iranian terrorists to stop the freedom of navigation and the free flow of energy. Let me be clear. It is a good thing to wipe out terrorists who indiscriminately target civilians and attempt to hold the global economy hostage. And President Trump should be commended for doing so. As the president made unequivocally clear to the remaining elements of this terrorist regime in his statement yesterday, if they do anything to stop the flow of oil or goods within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the world's most powerful military 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far. Moving forward, the stated objectives for Operation Epic Fury remain the same: destroy the terrorist regime's ballistic missiles, raise their Iranian missile industry to the ground, ensure their terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region, and ensure that Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon. President Trump remains confident these goals will be accomplished in swift fashion. As for the oil, President Trump fully expected the rogue Iranian regime to try and disrupt the global markets. That's why President Trump and his energy team have been planning for this long before the strike and have moved quickly to address these temporary disruptions. Thus far, the Trump administration has offered political risk insurance to tankers operating in the Gulf. The Treasury temporarily waived certain oil-related sanctions, and the Commander-in-Chief has offered the U.S. Navy to escort tankers when necessary. The President and his energy team are closely watching the markets, speaking with industry leaders, and the U.S. military is drawing up additional options following the President's directive to continue keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. I will not broadcast what those options look like, but just know the President is not afraid to use them. Rest assured to the American people, the recent increase in oil and gas prices is temporary, and this operation will result in lower gas prices in the long term. Once the national security objectives of Operation Epic Fury are fully achieved, Americans will see oil and gas prices drop rapidly, potentially even lower than they were prior to the start of the operation. And we will live in a world where Iran can no longer threaten the United States or our allies with a nuclear bomb. On another matter here at home, President Trump is urging Congress to pass the Save America Act, one of the most critical pieces of legislation in our nation's history. The Save America Act is overwhelmingly popular with all Americans because each provision is rooted in common sense. The Save America Act has 5 simple requirements as requested by the President of the United States. Number 1, voters have to show ID to cast a ballot in an American election. Very simple. 90% of Americans, including more than 80% of Democrat voters, agree with this. Number 2, the Save America Act will require all voters to show proof of citizenship in order to register to vote in American elections. Again, this is popular and rooted in common sense. Only American citizens have the right to vote in American elections. But after Joe Biden and the Democrats allowed tens of millions of illegal aliens into our country, it's more important than ever to ensure that only American citizens are registering to vote on our nation's voter rolls, and Congress needs to pass this. Number 3, the Save America Act abolishes the incredibly unsecure practice of universal mail-in ballots, which throw the door wide open for fraud. Importantly, the Save America Act maintains exceptions for Americans to use mail-in ballots for illness, disability, military, or travel reasons. The bipartisan 2005 report of the Commission on Federal Election Reform, chaired by, of all people, former President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker, concluded that, quote, absentee ballots remain the largest source of potential voter fraud, and it is time for Congress to finally address this. Number 4, the Save America Act permanently bans men from competing in women's sports. President Trump signed a landmark executive order upholding the promise of Title IX and ending this dangerous and unfair practice. But now it's time for Congress to codify this into law. Number 5, the Save America Act bans transgender mutilation surgery for children. Again, President Trump signed a common sense executive order to do this and kept his promise to the American people, but now Congress needs to do the same and codify it. It's well past time for Democrats in Congress to stop perpetuating the radical and false claim that you can somehow change a child's sex. You cannot. Passing the Save America Act is the most important thing that Republicans and frankly Democrats can do to strengthen election integrity and protect our democracy. It's what the American people elected Republicans to do, and they must deliver on it as soon as possible. The president is calling on Congress to get the job done and send this historic piece of legislation to his desk immediately for signature. So with that today, I will take your questions. Benny, thank you for being here, and why don't you start us off?
Thank you, Caroline. So my first question is actually about the Save America Act. So one of the biggest things that the Democrats are saying, the claims that they're making, is that the Save America Act, it would prevent married women from voting in elections or make it harder for them. What do you have to say to those claims? Is there any validity to them, and where do you think they're getting this from?
There is zero validity to these claims, and I'm glad that you brought them up, because you have the Democrats who have created this myth, and it has been perpetuated, unfortunately, by many in the mainstream media. Let me be very clear. The Save America Act does not prohibit anyone from voting, with the exception of illegal aliens. And the greatest way to disenfranchise American citizens from voting in American elections is to allow illegal aliens to vote, which is what Democrats want to do. We see it taking place in Democrat jurisdictions at the state and local level across this country. So the Save America Act corrects that. And as far as married women who have changed their name, if they're already registered to vote, they're entirely unaffected by the SAVE Act. And for the small fraction of individuals who have changed their name or their address, they can still register to vote, of course. They just have to go through their state processes to update that documentation. And this is something that the American people, married women, and minorities, and people all across this country who Democrats are insultingly saying cannot do this, they're already doing it every day, going to the Social Security office, going to the DMV, and I think it's frankly insulting that the Democrats are saying that there are certain groups of people in this country who aren't smart enough to update their documentation to allow them to vote. Again, this is a huge myth, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to address it.
Of course, and then just one more question about DHS. The funding issue has been 3+ weeks now. I was at the airport this morning in St. Louis, Missouri, and it was early in the morning, and one of the TSA agents, I saw her, she was kind of tearing up, she was crying, and I asked her, I was like, what's wrong? And she was like, I can't make my phone payment, I can barely make my car payment that's coming up. I think a lot in the Beltway, there's so much noise between Democrats, Republicans. It's the Democrats' fault, it's the Republicans' fault. But what is the White House's message to the American people that are struggling because they're not getting that paycheck? It's take away the politics. What do you have to say to those people?
President Trump wants the Department of Homeland Security, he wants TSA, he wants FEMA, he wants the brave men and women of our United States Coast Guard to receive their paychecks, and he wants this department to be fully funded and fully reopened. And so to any American out there who is struggling without a paycheck, we know there's more than 100,000 of you across the country. To any American out there who is showing up to an airport and facing incredibly long wait times and lines, call your Democrat member of Congress and tell them to fund the Department of Homeland Security. That's what President Trump wants to do, and it's completely ridiculous that the American people are suffering as a result of these partisan games that are being played by Democrats on Capitol Hill. Thank you. Steve.
You said the operation was going faster than anticipated. What is your current timeline for how long the war will last?
So look, as you know, Steve, the president and the U.S. military's initial timeline was about 4 to 6 weeks to achieve the full objectives of Operation Epic Fury. Again, to destroy their missiles and their ability to make them, destroy their Navy, permanently deny them nuclear weapons forever, and to, of course, weaken their evil terrorist proxies in the region. We know that the U.S. military and our brave warfighters are quickly and expeditiously executing these objectives well ahead of schedule, but ultimately the operations will end when the Commander-in-Chief determines the military objectives have been met, fully realized, and that Iran is in a position of complete and unconditional surrender, whether they say it or not.
Does the president still want Iran's unconditional surrender?
Well, when President Trump says that Iran is in a place of unconditional surrender, he's not claiming the Iranian regime is going to come out and say that themselves. What the president means is that Iran's threats will no longer be backed by a ballistic missile arsenal that protects them from building a nuclear bomb in their country. I could make an empty threat, but if I have no actions to back it up, then it's an empty threat. And so President Trump will determine when Iran is in a place of unconditional surrender, when they no longer pose a credible and direct threat to the United States of America and our allies. Adriana.
Can you explain why the Energy Secretary posted and then appeared to have deleted a post on X saying that the U.S. Navy escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz?
Yes, I was made aware of this post. I haven't had a chance to talk to the Energy Secretary about it directly. However, I know the post was taken down pretty quickly, and I can confirm that the U.S. Navy has not escorted a tanker or a vessel at this time, though, of course, that's an option the president has said he will absolutely utilize if and when necessary at the appropriate time.
And if this was something that was posted erroneously, could it be because of a staffer? What, I guess, will there be any consequences for this? I know you still have to consult, but just generally speaking.
Again, I would defer you to the Department of Energy to answer that question.
And if I could just follow up really quickly.
Sure.
In terms of oil sanctions, the president said that there would be some sanctions that would be lifted. Would those be on Venezuela, Russia? Could you give some specifics there and then timing for that as well?
Sure. I know it's something that the Treasury Department and the president's energy team continue to discuss, and they will ultimately consult with the president before decisions are made. I don't have any announcements on new sanctions or the lifting of new sanctions for you today. Alex.
Thank you. Reuters has reported that about 150 U.S. service members have been injured so far. Can you confirm that number and elaborate on that?
I can't confirm the exact number. I know it's within that ballpark, but I would defer you to the Pentagon for a specific number of wounded or injured thus far.
And then secondly, if I can, I wanted to ask about, there was a briefing on the Capitol Hill today, and some senators came out and said they were more convinced than ever that there would be U.S. boots on the ground. Senator Blumenthal said that, in fact. Your reaction to that and any update on President Trump's thinking about it?
Look, I would say that Democrats on Capitol Hill are clearly being quite disingenuous. 3 years ago, not a single Democrat voted against the resolution condemning Iran as the world's leading state sponsor of terror. Yet now, with President Trump as commander-in-chief finally taking the action that so many Democrats have called on the commander-in-chief to do for many, many years to wipe out the threat of a rogue Iranian terrorist regime, now all of a sudden Democrats are playing politics with this long-standing bipartisan policy of the United States, and 53 of them in the House recently voted against the resolution condemning Iran as the world's state sponsor of terror. So I wouldn't take Democrats at their word. As for boots on the ground, the president has talked about this repeatedly. Wisely, he does not rule options out as commander-in-chief. So again, I would hesitate to confirm anything that a Democrat on Capitol Hill says right now about the president's thinking. Garrett.
John, you outlined to Steve the military components of what would be involved in ending this war, but it seems like there's a political component too. The president said to Fox earlier today that he doesn't believe the new Ayatollah can live in peace. He made a variety of comments suggesting that he should be involved in picking the new Iranian leader. Is the ending of this war also contingent on Iran selecting a leader that the president finds acceptable? And if so, how is that not the definition of a regime change war?
Look, as President Trump has blatantly and frankly stated, it's obviously within the best interest of the United States and the West to no longer have a radical terrorist in charge of Iran, especially as we see their reaction to Operation Epic Fury. They had their missiles turned towards our Gulf and Arab partners in the region. Again, this was a regime that chanted, or still chants, death to America. We look at the way that they are holding the entire world hostage with the restricting of the free flow of energy through the Strait of Hormuz. So the president, I think, is making quite an obvious comment. Again, as for the timeline of the military operations with respect to Iran, we have objectives that we have laid out that the commander-in-chief wants to see achieved. When they are achieved, then it will ultimately be up to the president to end this operation.
Okay, so I think not exactly addressing my question, though. Is that political objective also necessary for the president to decide to end this war?
Look, again, I just told you the objectives of Operation Epic Fury. When those objectives are met, the president will dictate the end of these operations when he deems that Iran no longer poses a credible threat to the United States of America. And again, it goes back to what does that unconditional surrender look like? Iran can talk all they want, and their words will be very empty when we've completely annihilated their navy as we are doing, when we've taken out the threat of their ballistic missile capability, when we can firmly finally ensure that they can no longer make a nuclear bomb to threaten the United States and our allies and our troops in the region. And that's what President Trump is ultimately seeking to do with respect to this operation. Jennifer.
There was a shooting outside of a synagogue in Baltimore. Do you know if the president has been briefed on that, and do you have any more details on what happened?
I don't, but we certainly will get you more details, Jennifer. And I don't know if the president has briefed, but I'll check on that when I get back to the Oval Office after this. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. The president said yesterday for the first time that he had to strike Iran because he believes that Iran was going to strike U.S. targets within 7 days. And then he bumped that down later to 3 days. Where is he getting that?
Well, that's not the first time the president has said that he chose to launch Operation Epic Fury because he felt as though Iran was going to strike the United States and our assets in the region first. Again, I addressed this in the last briefing. This was a feeling the president had based on facts provided to him by his top negotiators who had been engaged with the Iranian regime in a good faith effort. The Iranian regime was lying, deceiving the United States of America, clearly trying to continue their nuclear program to create a bomb that would, of course, threaten the United States of America. Again, their ballistic missile arsenal, they were rapidly and aggressively increasing that by the month to a place where they would essentially build immunity for themselves, where a future president or President Trump would not be able to launch this incredibly successful operation. And so the president, again, as I have reiterated and he has said, was not going to sit back and allow the Iranian regime to threaten or to attack the United States of America any longer.
But there are no U.S. leaders or Israeli leaders who are making those same claims. So is he making this up to justify his decision to go to war now?
The president is not making anything up, Nancy. He is looking at this every single day based on intelligence, based on facts, and based on intelligence that he himself and his negotiators have consumed based on their, again, negotiations with the rogue Iranian regime over the past year. And the president and his team tried in a good faith way to reach a diplomatic deal through peaceful means with the Iranian regime. And Iran chose this path to death and destruction. Iran wanted to attack the United States of America, and the president was not going to sit back and allow that to happen. He was not going to sit back and allow that to happen, and everyone in this room should be grateful for it. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Two questions for you. One has to do with a follow-up to your statement that you made at the beginning of the briefing regarding the Save America Act.
Sure.
Yesterday, the Senate Majority Leader John Thune spoke on the effort to potentially have a filibuster broken, the rules for the filibuster broken. He said the votes aren't there, one, to nuke the filibuster, and the votes aren't there for a talking filibuster. He says that's the reality. What's your reaction to what Senator Thune said?
Look, I think President Trump, the urgency behind his need to pass the Save America Act and his desire to get this country-saving legislation passed has been made quite clear. He wants all options on the table, and he wants the Senate to move as quickly as possible through whatever means necessary.
And then secondly, just regarding the president's trip tomorrow, looking ahead, why Ohio and why Northern Kentucky?
Well, why not? These are two great states with great Americans.
Just wanted to know why they were chosen.
Great states with great Americans. The president will be joined by lawmakers from both states who he greatly admires and respects and supports. And he'll be meeting with business owners in both of these places and talking about the economy, which is, of course, the utmost importance to him.
Caroline.
Thank you. Last week, the Energy Secretary issued a waiver for India to get oil, Russian oils, during this energy crisis.
Yes.
Have you spoken to President about it? What's the idea behind this?
Have I spoken to the president about it?
Yes.
Yes, I have spoken to the president about it. And the president and the Secretary of Treasury and the whole national security team came to this decision because our allies in India, as you know, Lalit, have been good actors and have previously stopped buying sanctioned Russian oil. So as we work to appease this temporary gap of oil supply around the world because of the Iranians, we have temporarily permitted them to accept that Russian oil. And this Russian oil was already at sea. It was already out on the water. So this short-term measure, we don't believe it will provide significant financial benefit to the Russian government at this time.
I have one more question about Pakistan. You know, Pakistan is a neighbor of Iran, and Pakistan is also an ally of U.S. President has been praising a lot about the field marshal. Is Pakistan providing any kind of support in this war against Iran?
That I will have to check on with the Pentagon and get back to you. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. The president said yesterday that President Putin told him he wanted to be helpful in the Middle East. The Kremlin put out a statement where Putin said, quote, "I would like to reaffirm our unwavering support for Tehran and our solidarity with Iranian friends." How does the president think that Russia could be helpful, if not helping Iran? And did the president push Putin on Russia sharing intelligence with Iran in this war?
The president and his special envoy Witkoff have both said that, of course, they've sent a message to Russia that if that was taking place, it's not something they would be happy with, and they hope that it is not taking place. As for further details about the discussions between these two leaders, I'll leave it to the president to divulge any more of that conversation, but he did confirm it yesterday and provided you with a little bit of the background in his view and his perspective, as he always does. Luke.
Regarding the missile strike on the Iranian school, how long does the administration expect that investigation to take, and will the White House or the Department of Defense release a full report of its findings once the investigation is complete?
The Department of War will do that. The investigation continues, and as the president said yesterday at his press conference, he will accept the conclusion of that investigation, whatever it may be. We'll go to the back row for some love. Sure, in the back with the glasses. Go ahead.
Regarding the Shield of the Americas,
Caroline,
is
and
there
then you can go, but go first.
Okay, thank you.
Is there an update regarding
You have rough real estate back there, so I'm trying to give you
is
some
there an
love.
update regarding Cuba, and also is an economic deal imminent?
Sure, I don't have any updates on Cuba for you today. Obviously, this is something the administration is actively dealing with. The president's made it quite clear, it's his belief, based on fact, that the Cuban regime is bound to fall. The country is obviously in a very weak place, economically speaking. The people are crying out for help, and the president believes and knows that the Cuban regime wants a deal. So as you know, Secretary of State Rubio has been engaged in those conversations as directed by the president. I don't have any updates for you today, though.
Thank you, Caroline. Regarding the Shield of the Americas, the initiative by President Trump this weekend, big names, a lot of countries, but some notable absences. For instance, Colombia, which is a key ally with the United States in terms of counter-narcotics. And President Gustavo Petro was here at the White House, and he met with President Trump. Why wasn't Colombia invited to the Shield of the Americas?
I don't think we're seeing the level of cooperation we quite want to see yet from the Colombian government to invite them to the Shield of America's event and pact, but we certainly hope that this newfound organization will expand and we can continue to invite additional member countries. But there was quite a few countries there. I believe there were 17 countries represented, 12 heads of state with the president over the weekend. They signed a defense agreement with all of our militaries to emphasize the need to combat drug cartels through Latin America in the Western Hemisphere, and ultimately, of course, to curb the illegal trafficking of drugs to the United States, which is the president's utmost priority in all of this. So it was a great event on Saturday, and we look forward to the coalition expanding. Kelly in the back.
Caroline, thank you. Good to see you. I want to get back to another question that was asked earlier. It talked about the political aspects, but there's also the ideological and the spiritual aspects of what Iran has said for 47 years. Death to America, death to Israel. And we've just finished talking about the fact that terror has been around the world. Iran has been the nexus of that in so many ways. Has the president stated clearly to the American people why this is such an imminent threat in order for Democrats on Capitol Hill and Republicans and the American people to understand how imminent the threat was?
I think he has, Kelly. I mean, you've heard from the president on an almost daily basis over the course of the past 10 days. You've heard it from me at this podium. You've heard it from the Secretary of War, the Secretary of State, the Vice President of the United States. You know, the president's top cabinet and his officials have been repeatedly explaining to the American public the threat that Iran has posed to our country in this moment, but of course over the course of the past 47 years. And their words, again, chanting death to America, speak for themselves. Go ahead. You can follow up.
Why the division within the American people? I realize that we have the people are talking about the War Powers Act. They're talking about all kinds of issues. But have people forgotten just how imminent that threat was? If they keep saying death to America and death to Israel, they mean it.
Look, I don't think the American people have forgotten, but I think Democrats on Capitol Hill, they have not forgotten, but they are just so plagued with this resistance to President Trump on everything that they do that, again, they can't even rally behind the common sense, bipartisan, long-standing principle of the United States of America that Iran absolutely poses a threat to the United States, that Iran is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. And I think that's reflected again in their voting pattern. In 2023, every single member of the House of Representatives, with the exception of one, I believe the final vote was 412 to 1 in 2023 for a resolution condemning Iran as the world's state leading sponsor of terror. And now in this year, under this president in 2026, 53 Democrats voted against that exact same resolution with the exact same language. I don't think that's a change in the threat that Iran has posed to the United States. I think it's a change in the Democrat Party's thinking and their vicious hatred for President Trump. Danny. Sure.
National threat level, following on Kelly, what's the national threat level right now because of this death to America, death to Israel issue?
I believe the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI have repeatedly and continuously provided updates on the threat level to the homeland. I don't want to speak on it out of turn from up here, but of course, the federal government is continuing to coordinate and partner with local law enforcement agencies across the ground to thwart potential threats to the homeland. This is something the administration obviously takes very seriously. We are thwarting threats that, frankly, most Americans don't know about because they never make headlines, but that's the great work that the Department of Homeland Security is doing, and it emphasizes and underscores the point of why Democrats need to fund and reopen fully the Department of Homeland Security right now. Danny.
On the Iranian school, why did President Trump say yesterday that Iran may have Tomahawk missiles when there are only 3 other U.S. allies plus the U.S. that have those missiles and therefore could...
Look, again, as the president said yesterday, he will accept the conclusion of this investigation by the Department of War. I know there's been a lot of speculation in the media about who may be responsible for this. We're not going to get ahead of the Department of War and the conclusion of that investigation. The president has a right to share his opinions with the American public, but he has said he'll accept the conclusion of that investigation. And frankly, we're not going to be harassed by the New York Times, who's been putting out a lot of articles on this, making claims that have just not been verified by the Department of War, to quickly wrap up this investigation because the New York Times is calling on us to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Carolyn, with the DHS currently under a partial Democrat shutdown, does the administration have any specific concerns about potential impact on Homeland Security or intelligence monitoring of sleeper cells inside the United States? And do you have any comment on the bombing, the 2 individuals that bombed New York City or tried to?
Yeah, it was absolutely despicable to see that attack in New York City. I know the FBI is investigating, and the Department of Justice and SDNY have announced they are charging those 2 individuals and alleged terrorists, and I know they won't rest until justice is sought in this case. Daniel.
Thank you, Caroline. Appreciate it. Millions of Americans are filing taxes for the first time since the president signed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act into law. New reports say that new IRS data says that the average federal tax refund is around $3,800, a little bit up from the last period of last year. Does the president believe that the average federal tax refund increasing this year could provide a little bit more economic growth, something that he's been very focused on as the year progresses?
Absolutely. And Americans are going to start benefiting from the fruits of President Trump and Republicans labor through the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill and these historic tax cuts. We are midway through tax season, so just to provide an update from the Treasury Department that just went out moments ago, nearly 63.5 million tax returns have been processed thus far, 45% of the anticipated total number of tax returns by April 15th, so don't forget to file your taxes, people. And the average refund this year is more than $3,700. And we know that more than 27.5 million individuals who have filed their tax returns thus far have claimed at least one of President Trump's new tax cuts. Over 3.5 million returns have claimed no tax on tips. Over 15.5 million returns have claimed no tax on overtime. Over 9.2 million returns have claimed the enhanced deduction for seniors. And over 690,000 returns have claimed no tax on car loan interest. And another amazing statistic, nearly 3.5 million Trump accounts have been opened for children in our country thus far. So we look forward to, I know the Treasury Department continues to look forward to seeing these checks go out the door and into the pockets of hardworking Americans. And the president will be meeting with them himself tomorrow on the road in both Ohio and Kentucky. And we look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Caroline.
And that was White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt taking reporter questions at a White House briefing covering a range of issues, including the DHS shutdown, the war in Iran, Cuba as well, the Strait of Hormuz. Just a couple points I'll highlight here. So in terms of unconditional surrender, which President Trump has said is the only thing the Iranian regime can do, Caroline Leavitt was asked a question on this, on what the president means by unconditional surrender. And she said what it means is that when President Trump himself deems Iran is in a position of no longer a threat to the United States, to Israel, to the world. And another point that Caroline Leavitt responded to a question about was the deleted post by Energy Secretary Chris Wright on the Strait of Hormuz, where a Navy tanker apparently escorted an oil tanker. She responded saying that that post was deleted because there's actually, in fact, at this point, no reports, no knowledge of a Navy escort of an oil tanker, and that's the end of that issue. Okay, let's move on to a break now. We're taking a short break. War Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. is winning with an unrelenting focus on its objectives, saying that today will be the most intense day of strikes inside Iran. Stay with us for more after this.
They tried to silence us. But 5,000 years cannot be erased.
A lost world reborn. Timeless. Divine. Witness the revival. Experience the extraordinary. Live on stage. Returns to David Koch Theater, March 25th through April 12th. Get your tickets now at shenyun.com.
I can't get a hold of my mom.
I'm sure it's nothing.
I've called her 5 times.
I'm sure she's fine.
Is Grandma okay? Help! I've fallen and I can't get up.
Don't worry, ma'am. We're sending help right now.
Hello?
Hello, this is Life Alert. Your mother had an emergency, and we dispatched paramedics to her home.
Oh my gosh, what happened?
She had a fall, but don't worry. She is safe, and the paramedics are helping her right now.
Thank you.
Life Alert saves a life every 11 minutes. With one simple touch of a button, Life Alert sends help immediately. Whether it's to report a fall, a medical emergency, or an intruder, Life Alert sends first responders fast.
For a free brochure, call 800-382-9846. 800-382-9846. That's 800-382-9846.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretane Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
For the first time ever, we're bringing you MyPillow mattresses and mattress toppers for as low as $99.98. Remember, sleep's all about temperature and pressure points. Whatever sleep needs you have, we have the right technology for you. Like our MyPillow mattress topper, our queen size has over 10,000 individual comfort supports to help relieve your pressure points. And how about our 3-inch Hybrid Plus mattress topper? It's infused with copper and silver to help your body get the restorative sleep it needs. And our MyPillow and Case Coil mattresses, I personally helped develop these mattresses to make sure they have everything needed to give us great sleep. Plus, they're made right here in the USA, and they ship right to your front door absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to get MyPillow mattresses and toppers for as low as $99.98 and free shipping.
Energy Secretary Chris Wright says the U.S. could tap into its strategic petroleum reserve amid the war with Iran. The U.S. would coordinate sales with releases from other countries. The U.S. Strategic Reserve, located on the coasts of Texas and Louisiana, holds about 415 million barrels of oil. Wright added that the U.S. could allow more sales of Russian oil held in tankers in Asia. Late last week, Washington issued a 30-day waiver allowing the sale of Russian crude currently stranded at sea to continue to India. Yesterday, the International Energy Agency called for a coordinated oil release. The agency told the G7 finance ministers that it holds more than 1.2 billion barrels of public emergency oil stocks. And G7 nations are preparing to potentially use their strategic oil reserves. Here's France's finance minister.
We just had a meeting of the G7 energy ministers after yesterday's G7 finance minister, where we decided in principle to use all available tools in order to stabilize market, including the potential release of stockpiling. The G7 energy ministers today decided to go further down the route of working to get ready to any opportunity.
G7 ministers are asking the International Energy Agency, based in Paris, to provide updated data on oil reserves. They say they need more details before they decide to use their oil reserves. The French finance minister says member states want to be ready to react at any moment. He adds that all members are aware of the situation and are willing to stabilize the market, including the United States.
Developing situation coming out of Canada. Police are investigating after shots were fired at the U.S. consulate in Toronto. Police say they believe two individuals got out of the vehicle, opened fire at the U.S. consulate, got back into their vehicle, and drove away at around 4:30 a.m. local time. Police learned of the shooting about an hour later. Toronto police can be seen at the location. They say they found shell casings and damage to the building, but report no injuries. They haven't announced a suspect or a motive. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow condemning the shooting. She says there's a heightened police presence at U.S. and Israeli consulates amid the war in Iran. Several streets remain closed as police investigate the shooting. They say they're taking the incident very seriously. They're urging anyone with potential footage of the shooting to come forward. As this is a developing story, we'll keep you updated on the latest information as it comes out. Iran's lead nuclear negotiator tells Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff that Tehran has the right to enrich uranium. Witkoff says Iranian officials told him they had enough material for 11 nuclear bombs. We have more news after this break. Stay with us.
This is an urgent appeal from Save the Children.
I saw war, bombing, shooting. I'm worried for my future.
Чую вибухи. Не знаю. І не ходжу в школу.
Conflict is raging across the world, and millions of children's lives are being devastated by war, hunger, disease, and poverty. We urgently need your help to reach children in crisis. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month, only 33 cents a day. We need 1,000 new monthly donors this month to help children in crisis around the world. You can help us provide food, essentials, and life-saving medical care to children in the most need.
ما نحسن ننام طاوة من كتر القصف هيك حياتنا الله يصطفى فيهم بس.
In the darkest times, children suffer the most. You can help by calling right now and giving just $10 a month. Please call or go online now. Your donation today can help secure additional grants, which can multiply the impact of your support up to 10 times. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you the Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
وقتی قدم جام دهات ما كلك قصفدي تندات ما ملكتن ما دنجي في شنغان ديستن ما مالي خالو بيكر معني مالي خمو عمد داغرين.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Show them they're not alone. Please call or go online to givetosave.org to help save lives.
Introducing the Quest-Wise Soothing Herbal Eye Patches. It comes with 30 pairs and can be used to help combat tired and strained eyes. The natural herbal formula provides a cooling minty